Young Turks now has audio, the TYT Audio Network, podcasts of some of your favorite shows and new shows, including one with Nina Turner, former Ohio State Senator. She's going to do We the People with Nina Turner, talking about equality and justice and seeing that through the eyes of regular Americans who are affected by politics and policy. Everybody check it out at tyt.com/audio.
The internet regulations, as we know them, are all about to change. So the Republican-led Federal Communications Commission voted along party lines in December to repeal the rules which were intended to prevent internet providers from blocking, speeding up, or slowing down access to specific online services. Now, in a statement at the time to the FCC chairman Ajit Pai, framed the upcoming repeal as removing some burdensome regulations. Here's what he said at the time. Now, on June 11th, these unnecessary and harmful internet regulations will be repealed, and the bipartisan light touch approach that served the online world well for nearly 20 years will be restored. Now, there are obviously two very different sides to this, and here's what you need to know. The concern among net neutrality advocates is that the repeal could give internet providers too much control over how online content is delivered. It may also make it harder for the next generation of online services to compete if they have to pay up to be placed in a so-called internet fast lane. Jessica Rosen-Wursel is a Democrat who is on the commission who voted against the repeal, and this is what she said in part in her statement. Plain and simple, thanks to the FCC's rollback of net neutrality, internet providers have the legal green light, the technical ability and business incentive to discriminate and manipulate what we see, read, and learn on live. Now, for his part, Ajit Pai has said that there are still some sufficient safeguards in place to protect against broadband abusing their control over the internet broadband service providers. So that said,
okay. So Ajit Pai says that there are still some protections in place. He didn't list any of them, but there are still some protections in place. He is full of complete BS. That's all he's full of. He is a Trump appointee, but more importantly, he's a former lawyer for Verizon, which is an internet service provider which has lobbied very aggressively to do away with these regulatory standards that would prevent them from slowing down the speeds of their competitors and other websites that they disagree with. There are no protections put in place. And if there are, it's tiny in comparison to what net neutrality actually did accomplish.
And if those protections were never something that people wanted to infringe upon, then what was the problem with the regulations? I also think, and I want to get your take on this, Mark. So he says the online world, this was the light touch approach that served the online world well for nearly 20 years, will be restored. I wonder, do you think the internet has perhaps changed since when that was in place?
No, not at all. It's been the same for 20 years.
Exactly the same.
Right, it's just populated. It's just gotten more crowded, and now I think there are a couple of important things. First, last thing first, maybe the economic incentive, which was mentioned. Grace mentioned the economic incentive. That is there in a big way, so that they will almost, I think, by definition, because of that economic incentive, charge people, websites, streaming services, all the rest, to have a space on that broadband. In other words, that's what's going to happen. If you want to watch, markthompson.com, whatever, I'm going to have to pay more for you to be able to watch markthompson.com at any kind of reasonable streaming rate. So there's an economic incentive for them to begin charging and having a fast lane and a slow lane. And what have you seen in America? Whenever there's an economic incentive, it's not just even America, internationally. When there's an economic incentive, it's going to happen. So you're going to start seeing charges. By the way, just on the politics, this was something that even under Obama was threatened. You'll remember, I think Tom Wheeler, the FCC chairman, who also had roots as a big executive in the cable industry. He was running the FCC. I mean, you see how swampy Washington is always. Now it's swampier than it ever was. It's so ironic that Trump, had that drain the swamp crap. But anyway, these guys all come from this world, and they now have a huge victory. And there's going to be a lot of money at stake, and this is going to be money that's pouring into these providers.
And there are multiple factors that make this particular story so disastrous. It's not just the fact that we're now doing away. By the way, the reason why this is a big story today is because the regulations are now gone, effective today.
June 11th.
Exactly. So that's the reason why people are talking about it. But when you couple the lack of regulations with all of these major internet service providers merging together, and the fact that a lot of these providers have created monopolies throughout the country. So for instance, if you are living in certain parts of the country, you can only get Time Warner. Other parts of the country, you can only get Verizon. A lot of these internet service providers, telecommunications companies, have now purchased major media organizations and companies. And so not only will it create a financial incentive for, these telecommunications companies to act like mob bosses demanding money for the fast lane, but they'll slow down the speeds for their competitors. Why wouldn't they? So the free and open internet will cease to exist. And it's really a disastrous thing if you believe in a free and open internet to inform yourself in order to seek the truth. We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we do and what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most. And it's also going to be increasingly difficult, if not impossible, for independent media to thrive.
Right.
Yes, exactly, and that is where the shoe really pinches, because the open dialogue that you get on the internet, everything coming to you at the same speed, all the different opinions, all the different sources of information coming in the same way at the same speed, that is going to be gone. And then you cut to places like Sinclair Broadcasting, and as Anna says, the consolidation and monopolization of our democratic process, that is to say, the plurality of thought, the plurality of all of those different forms of information, all of that being now consolidated and monopolized by a few companies, and you end up with a huge company like Sinclair, which we know is right-wing, not letting you see even anything that's progressive or left. This is a real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.